At 06:15 on January 7, 1945, Major Thomas McGuire climbed into the cockpit of a P-38 Lightning at Dulag Airfield on Leyte, watching three other Lightnings prepare for a fighter sweep he wasn't authorized to fly. 24 years old. 38 confirmed kills. 2 victories behind America's ace of aces. Richard Bong had 40 victories. McGuire had 38. And Lieutenant General George Kenney had explicitly grounded McGuire to keep it that way. The 5th Air Force had 2 problems in the Philippines by January 1945. The first was Japanese fighters still operating from hidden airstrips across the islands. The second was Thomas McGuire's obsession with breaking Dick Bong's record. McGuire had joined the 431st Fighter Squadron of the 475th Fighter Group in July 1943. For the first year, combat had been frustrating. Administrative duties as squadron commander kept him grounded for weeks at a time. Periodic illness knocked him out of action. While other pilots racked up kills, McGuire flew a desk. Then, August 18, 1943 happened. Over Wewak, New Guinea, McGuire shot down 2 Nakajima Ki-43 Oscars and 1 Kawasaki Ki-61 Tony. The next day, 2 more Oscars. 5 kills in 2 days. Ace status after a year of nothing. His skill at maneuvering the big twin-engine P-38 became legendary. Other pilots struggled with the Lightning's size and complexity. McGuire made it dance. He wrote a combat tactics manual for the entire 5th Air Force. Civilian contractor Charles Lindbergh bunked with him in summer 1944, flew as his wingman on unauthorized missions. McGuire treated the famous aviator like an errand boy. By October 17, 1943, McGuire had 11 confirmed victories. That day over Oro Bay, he dove into 7 Zeros attacking a lone P-38, shot down 3. The remaining 4 shredded his aircraft. Controls destroyed, he bailed out at 12,000 feet. His parachute harness snagged on something in the cockpit. Plummeting, 1,000 feet. Finally freed himself and jumped. Landed in the ocean 25 miles from shore. His life raft had shrapnel holes. He couldn't inflate it. A Navy PT boat fished him out 30 minutes later. 6 weeks in the hospital. Wrist wound, broken ribs, additional injuries that would have ended most pilots' careers. McGuire returned to combat. The race with Bong intensified through 1944. Every time McGuire closed the gap, Bong would match him kill for kill. November 10th, McGuire shot down a Ki-43 over Ormoc Bay. A chunk of the exploding Oscar smashed through his canopy, struck him in the head, knocked him unconscious. When he came to, blood covered his face. He told no one. Feared being pulled off flight status. December 7th, McGuire and Bong flew together over Ormoc Bay. After the mission, McGuire discovered he'd been sitting in a pool of blood. A rifle-caliber bullet had punctured his cockpit during a strafing run, grazed his buttocks. He said nothing. Christmas Day 1944. McGuire led 15 P-38s as top cover for bombers striking Mabalacat Airdrome over Luzon. 20 Japanese fighters attacked. McGuire's guns jammed mid-fight. For 30 minutes, he used his P-38 as his only weapon, maneuvering like a madman, drawing enemy fighters away from the bombers, forcing one into his wingman's line of fire. 3 confirmed kills that day. December 26th, McGuire volunteered to lead escort fighters to Clark Field. During the engagement, he shot down 4 more Japanese fighters in rapid succession. 38th victory. 2 behind Bong. General Kenney made a decision. Bong was flying home for a publicity tour. America's ace of aces deserved his moment. Kenney grounded McGuire until Bong received his welcome home celebration. McGuire ignored the order. On December 30th, 31st, and January 2nd, he flew unauthorized combat missions. His entire squadron knew he'd been benched. They looked the other way. Should he shoot anyone down, he'd just hold back the news until Bong was properly celebrated stateside. If you want to see how McGuire's final mission turned out, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories from the Pacific War. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to McGuire. Kenney never discovered the unauthorized flights. Bong landed in San Francisco New Year's Eve and started his victory lap. McGuire planned one more mission. January 7th. A fighter sweep over Negros Island. 4 P-38s. Himself, Major Jack Rittmeyer visiting from the 13th Air Force, Captain Edwin Weaver, and Lieutenant Douglas Throp. At 06:15 that morning, McGuire made a decision about external fuel tanks. Standard procedure was to jettison drop tanks before engaging enemy fighters. The extra weight and drag made the P-38 dangerously unstable in combat maneuvers. Every pilot knew this. McGuire had written about it in his tactics manual. But McGuire wanted those 3 kills to tie Bong's record. The drop tanks gave them range to search multiple airstrips. He ordered his flight to keep the tanks attached. The 4 P-38 Lightnings lifted off from Dulag at 0630. Each aircraft carried 2 external drop tanks, 150 gallons each, 300 gallons of extra fuel hanging beneath the wings. The tanks added 1,000 pounds to each Lightning's weight, made them slower, less maneuverable, more vulnerable. McGuire led the flight north toward Negros Island. Rittmeyer flew as number 2, Weaver as number 3, Throp in the number 4 position. Their mission was simple: find Japanese fighters, shoot them down. McGuire needed 3 kills to tie Bong's record of 40. They reached Negros at 0720 and descended through cloud cover. Below them stretched 2 Japanese airstrips, Fabrica Aerodrome to the north, Manapla Airstrip to the south. Intelligence reports suggested both were still operational despite American bombing raids. McGuire circled Fabrica at 1,500 feet. No aircraft on the ground, no movement. The field appeared abandoned. He turned south toward Manapla. The second airstrip lay hidden in jungle vegetation, harder to spot from altitude, easier to hide fighters. At 0735, Captain Weaver spotted a lone aircraft climbing toward them from below and to the left, a Nakajima Ki-43 Oscar, Japanese Army Air Force fighter, lighter than the P-38, more maneuverable in a turning fight. The Oscar pilot should have run. 4 P-38s against 1 Oscar meant certain death for the Japanese pilot. The Oscar attacked anyway. Lieutenant Throp, flying in the number 3 position, saw the Oscar coming at him head-on. He broke hard left. The Japanese pilot turned with him, fell into position behind him, started firing. 12.7mm rounds. Throp's P-38 shuddered as bullets struck the left engine. Major Rittmeyer dove to help Throp, drove the Oscar off his tail. The Japanese pilot broke away, turned to find new targets. McGuire and Weaver sat directly in front of him. The Oscar pilot accelerated, closed the distance, positioned himself behind Weaver's P-38. McGuire and his flight had encountered Warrant Officer Akira Sugimoto, Japanese instructor pilot, 3,000 hours in the Ki-43 Oscar, one of the most experienced fighter pilots still operating in the Philippines. Sugimoto had survived 2 years of combat in New Guinea and the Dutch East Indies. He knew every limitation of his aircraft. He knew every advantage. The P-38s were heavier, faster, better armed. 4 50 caliber machine guns and 1 20mm cannon in each Lightning's nose. Devastating firepower if they could bring their guns to bear. But the P-38s were carrying drop tanks. The extra weight made them sluggish. Sugimoto recognized this immediately. He stayed behind Weaver, firing controlled bursts. Weaver radioed he was under attack, cut inside his turn to present a more difficult shot. The maneuver worked. Sugimoto couldn't get a clean angle. McGuire eased up on his own turn rate, drew the Japanese pilot's attention away from Weaver, onto himself. Sugimoto took the bait, switched his attack to McGuire. The 2 aircraft began a turning fight at 300 feet above the jungle canopy. Dangerous altitude for any combat maneuver. Suicidal for a P-38 carrying external fuel tanks. McGuire had written about this exact scenario in his tactics manual. Never engage at low altitude with drop tanks attached. The warning came from hard-won experience, from watching other pilots die making this exact mistake. McGuire increased his turn rate, tried to get his nose around to bring his guns to bear. Sugimoto stayed behind him, closing the distance. McGuire pulled harder. The P-38's airspeed bled off, 180 knots, 160, 140. The Lightning's twin Allison engines roared at full power. The airframe shuddered. McGuire needed just a few more degrees, just enough to get Sugimoto in his gun sight, just enough to fire. Above them, another Japanese fighter appeared, a second Oscar. This one flown by Technical Sergeant Mizunori Fukuda, 21 years old, former instructor, recently assigned to the 71st Sentai. Fukuda dove on Major Rittmeyer's P-38, attacked head-on, unleashed a devastating volley that shattered Rittmeyer's center nacelle and cockpit. The P-38 disintegrated, pitched down into a river. Rittmeyer died on impact. McGuire saw none of this. His entire focus remained on Sugimoto, on getting his guns lined up, on making the kill that would bring him one step closer to Bong's record. He pulled harder on the control yoke. The P-38 Lightning stalled at 300 feet. McGuire felt it instantly. The control yoke went mushy in his hands. The nose dropped. The aircraft snap-rolled inverted. Both Allison engines screaming at full throttle, but generating no lift. The twin booms flipped upside down. The jungle canopy rushed up at him. He had 2 seconds, maybe 3. At 300 feet with a fully loaded P-38, recovery was impossible. The external drop tanks made it worse. 1,000 pounds of dead weight. The Lightning fell like a brick. McGuire tried anyway, pushed the yoke forward to recover from the stall, started to roll the aircraft upright. For a fraction of a second, it looked like he might make it. The nose began to come up. The wings started to level. Then the ground arrived. The P-38 struck the jungle at 0741, January 7, 1945. The impact killed McGuire instantly. The aircraft exploded. Flames and black smoke rose above the tree line. Filipino civilians witnessed the crash from a nearby village. They rushed to the site, secured McGuire's body before Japanese forces could reach the wreckage. Above the crash site, the dogfight continued for another 30 seconds. Captain Weaver had observed Fukuda attacking Rittmeyer. Weaver fired at the Japanese pilot, severely damaged his Oscar. Fukuda managed a wheels-up landing at Manapla airstrip. His aircraft was destroyed on landing. He survived. Warrant Officer Sugimoto had also taken damage from the combined fire of Throp and Rittmeyer before Rittmeyer went down. Sugimoto's Oscar limped back toward Manapla, made it to the airfield, crash-landed. Filipino guerrillas found him later that day and killed him. Lieutenant Throp's P-38 had damage to one engine, trailing smoke. Captain Weaver's Lightning was intact. The 2 surviving Americans turned for home. They had lost their leader and Major Rittmeyer in less than 2 minutes of combat, against 2 Japanese fighters, while flying 4 P-38s carrying full external fuel tanks. The word reached 5th Air Force headquarters within hours. Major Thomas McGuire was missing in action, presumed dead. General George Kenney received the news while preparing for a conference in Manila. He stopped thinking about the war, stopped thinking about operations, started thinking about the young pilot he'd grounded 3 weeks earlier. The pilot who'd ignored the order and flown anyway. The pilot who'd been 2 kills away from breaking America's aerial victory record. Back in the United States, Dick Bong was completing his publicity tour. War bond rallies, newspaper interviews, parade appearances. America's ace of aces with 40 confirmed victories. The tour was supposed to last another 2 weeks. Then Bong would marry his fiancée Marjorie and take an assignment as a test pilot. The news about McGuire reached Bong on January 8th. The rivalry was over. Bong would remain America's highest-scoring ace, but he'd lost a fellow P-38 pilot, someone who understood what it meant to hunt Japanese fighters over the Pacific, someone who'd pushed the Lightning to its absolute limits. McGuire's body remained in the Philippines until 1949. The U.S. Army recovered his remains from the crash site, returned them to the United States. On May 17, 1950, Thomas Buchanan McGuire Jr. was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. He was posthumously promoted to lieutenant colonel. McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey was named in his honor in 1948. The Medal of Honor citation was published on March 7, 1946. It covered McGuire's actions on December 25 and 26, 1944. The 7 kills over 2 days. The missions where his guns jammed, and he continued fighting anyway. The risks he took to protect bombers and rescue wingmen. The citation made no mention of January 7th, made no mention of the unauthorized fighter sweep, made no mention of the decision to keep external fuel tanks attached during combat, made no mention of the low-altitude turning fight that violated every principle McGuire himself had written about in his tactics manual. But every P-38 pilot in the 5th Air Force knew what happened. They knew McGuire had broken his own rules. They knew he'd been grounded and flew anyway. They knew he'd been obsessed with beating Bong's record. They knew the obsession killed him. The question nobody could answer was why. Why would one of the finest pilots in the Army Air Forces make such a fundamental mistake? Why would the man who wrote the tactics manual ignore his own teachings? Why would someone with 38 confirmed victories throw it all away chasing 2 more? The answer lay in McGuire's path to becoming America's second highest scoring ace. Thomas Buchanan McGuire Jr. was born in Ridgewood, New Jersey on August 1, 1920. His parents divorced when he was young. He moved with his mother to Sebring, Florida, where he grew up in the Deep South. Small town, population under 5,000. Not many opportunities for a kid with big ambitions. McGuire didn't fit in at school. Defensive, prickly, developed a sense of superiority to conceal insecurities from years of bullying. Aviation became his escape. He enrolled at Georgia Institute of Technology in 1938 to study aeronautical engineering. Played in the marching band. Sergeant Major in ROTC. Member of Beta Theta Pi fraternity. Left after his third year to join the Army Air Corps in 1941. He reported to flying school in Corsicana, Texas, as an aviation cadet. Received further training in San Antonio. Commissioned second lieutenant on February 2, 1942. Awarded his pilot wings at Kelly Field. 21 years old. Fresh out of flight school. No combat experience, no kills. The Army assigned him to the 313th Pursuit Squadron at Selfridge Field, Michigan. Then to the 56th Pursuit Squadron at Payne Field, Washington. In June 1942, McGuire received his first combat assignment, the Aleutian Islands, flying patrols in a Bell P-39 Airacobra. The Aleutians were miserable. Constant fog, rain, wind, temperatures barely above freezing, even in summer. Japanese forces had occupied Attu and Kiska Islands. American fighters flew patrol missions looking for bombers and reconnaissance aircraft. Most missions saw nothing but clouds and ocean. McGuire flew with the 54th Fighter Group from June to October 1942. 4 months of combat patrols, 0 aerial victories, 0 opportunities to engage the enemy. The P-39 Airacobra was a poor aircraft for the mission. Short range, poor high-altitude performance, but it was what they had. In December 1942, McGuire married Marilyn Giesler. Her nickname was Pudgy. McGuire transferred to Hamilton Field, California, shortly after the wedding. In February 1943, he reported to Orange County Airport for transition training. New aircraft, the Lockheed P-38 Lightning. The Lightning was everything the Airacobra wasn't. Twin engines, long range, heavy armament, tricycle landing gear, excellent high-altitude performance. But it was big, complex, difficult to master. Many pilots struggled with the transition. McGuire took to it immediately. The size didn't intimidate him. The complexity became second nature. He studied every system, understood how to maximize performance, learned to make the big twin-engine fighter move like a single-engine pursuit plane. In March 1943, he shipped to the Southwest Pacific, assigned to the 9th Fighter Squadron, 49th Fighter Group, 5th Air Force, based in New Guinea. Dick Bong was already there, already scoring victories, already building a reputation. McGuire flew his first combat mission with the 49th on April 22nd. 2 months later, in June, he transferred to a brand new unit, the 475th Fighter Group. Lieutenant General George Kenney had created an entire group of P-38s, called them Satan's Angels. McGuire joined the 431st Fighter Squadron. For the next year, frustration defined his combat career. Administrative duties kept him grounded. As Squadron Operations Officer, then Squadron Commander, McGuire spent more time at a desk than in a cockpit. When he did fly combat missions, Japanese fighters were scarce. New Guinea was winding down. The enemy was retreating north. Meanwhile, other pilots racked up kills. Tommy Lynch, Neil Kirby, and especially Dick Bong. By mid-1943, Bong had 16 confirmed victories. McGuire had 0. The frustration ate at him. He'd been flying combat missions for over a year. Nothing to show for it. No kills, no recognition, no progress toward becoming an ace. Other pilots talked about Bong, about Lynch, about Kirby. Nobody talked about McGuire. He started preparing differently, became obsessive about details. Personally bore-sighted the guns on every aircraft in his squadron, a job normally done by ground crew. McGuire didn't trust anyone else to do it right. He studied Japanese fighter tactics, learned their strengths and weaknesses, memorized recognition silhouettes for every enemy aircraft type. August 18, 1943. Finally, a mission to Wewak, New Guinea. McGuire Squadron flew top cover for bombers. As they approached the target, Japanese fighters intercepted Nakajima Ki-43 Oscars, Kawasaki Ki-61 Tonys. McGuire dove into the fight. 2 Oscars destroyed, 1 Tony destroyed, 3 kills in 1 mission. August 19th, same area. McGuire shot down 2 more Oscars, 5 victories in 2 days. Ace status after 13 months of nothing. McGuire had arrived. But 5 kills wasn't enough. Lynch had more, Kirby had more, and Bong kept pulling further ahead. By September, Bong had 20 victories. McGuire had 5. The race had begun, and McGuire would do anything to win it. McGuire's kill count climbed slowly through late 1943. September, October, missions over New Guinea and New Britain, Japanese fighters becoming harder to find. The enemy was conserving aircraft, pulling back to defend more critical positions. Some missions saw no enemy contact at all. October 17th changed everything. McGuire was flying patrol over Oro Bay when radar picked up incoming Japanese bombers. Mitsubishi G4M Bettys, escorted by Mitsubishi A6M Zeros. McGuire's flight scrambled from Dobadura at 23,000 feet. He spotted the formation below, 15 to 20 Zeros, and 1 lone P-38 trailing smoke. 7 Zeros were attacking it. The P-38 pilot was finished unless someone intervened. McGuire didn't hesitate, dropped his external tanks, dove straight into the enemy formation. 3 Zeros destroyed in rapid succession. The other P-38 pilot survived, escaped. But now the remaining 4 Zeros focused entirely on McGuire. They swarmed him. Cannon fire shredded his left engine. Machine gun rounds hit his right engine. A 20mm shell exploded in his radio compartment. A 7.7mm bullet struck his wrist, passed through into the instrument panel. Shrapnel punctured his right arm and both hips. McGuire tried to pull out of his dive. The elevator controls were gone, completely useless. He released the escape hatch, tried to bail out. His parachute harness snagged on something inside the cockpit. The P-38 fell from 12,000 feet, 10,000, 8,000. McGuire struggled with the harness. 6,000, 4,000, 2,000. At approximately 1,000 feet, he broke free, jumped. The parachute deployed. He hit the water 25 miles offshore. His life raft had shrapnel holes, wouldn't inflate. McGuire floated in the ocean for 30 minutes before Navy PT boat 152 picked him up, carried him to PT tender Hilo in Buna Bay. 6 weeks in the hospital, wrist wound, broken ribs, puncture wounds. Most pilots would have been sent home. McGuire refused, returned to his squadron in December, 11 confirmed victories, still far behind Bong. Through early 1944, McGuire resumed combat operations. Administrative duties continued to limit his flying time. As commander of the 431st Fighter Squadron from April to December, he spent significant time on paperwork, training, and planning. Meanwhile, Bong flew missions as a freelance pilot attached directly to V Fighter Command. No administrative burden, just flying and killing. April 12, 1944. Bong shot down his 26th and 27th victories over Hollandia, surpassed Eddie Rickenbacker's World War I record of 26, became America's highest-scoring ace in history, national hero. Newspapers ran stories. Kenney promoted him to major. McGuire had 16 kills at the time, 10 behind Bong. The gap felt insurmountable. Summer 1944 brought an unusual visitor to the 475th Fighter Group, Charles Lindbergh, the famous aviator, first man to fly solo across the Atlantic. By 1944, Lindbergh was a civilian contractor working for United Aircraft Corporation. He visited the Southwest Pacific to study P-38 operations and fuel efficiency. Lindbergh bunked with McGuire for several weeks, flew as his wingman on unauthorized combat missions. The arrangement was illegal. Civilians weren't permitted to engage in combat. Lindbergh did it anyway. McGuire treated him like an assistant, ordered him around, told him to fetch coffee, run errands. Other pilots found it amusing. Lindbergh quietly complied. McGuire studied Lindbergh's fuel conservation techniques, applied them to his own flying, extended the P-38's range by careful throttle management. The extra range meant more time over target, more opportunities to find Japanese fighters, more chances to score kills. By October 1944, McGuire's score stood at 24. Bong had 38. The Philippines campaign was beginning. Both pilots flew from Tacloban airfield on Leyte. Japanese air opposition was fierce. Targets were plentiful. The race accelerated. November 2nd, McGuire escorted bombers to Ormoc Bay, shot down a Ki-43 Oscar. During his strafing run on Japanese ships, rifle-caliber ground fire punctured his cockpit. A bullet grazed his buttocks. He discovered the wound after landing. Blood soaked his seat. He told no one. Kept flying. 25 victories. November 10th, another mission over Ormoc. McGuire destroyed another Ki-43. During the engagement, a chunk of the exploding Oscar smashed through his canopy, struck him in the head, knocked him unconscious. He came to seconds later. Blood covered his face. Somehow, he flew the damaged P-38 back to base, landed, said nothing about the head injury. 26 victories. Bong shot down his 40th victory on December 17, 1944. 40 kills. The race was over. America's ace of aces. General MacArthur personally awarded him the Medal of Honor. McGuire had 31. General Kenney made his decision on December 18th. Dick Bong was going home. 40 victories. Medal of Honor. America needed its hero for war bond tours and publicity. The Ace of Aces deserved a proper celebration stateside. Kenney ordered Bong back to the United States. McGuire had 31 victories, 9 behind. The gap seemed impossible to close. But Bong would be gone for weeks, maybe months. Japanese air opposition over the Philippines remained strong. Targets were everywhere. McGuire saw his opportunity. December 25, 1944, Christmas Day. McGuire volunteered to lead 15 P-38s as top cover for bombers striking Mabalacat Airdrome over Luzon. The Japanese had captured the airfield in December 1941. Now, American bombers were taking it back. Heavy resistance expected. The formation approached the target at 0900 hours. 20 Japanese fighters attacked, Zeros and Oscars. They came from the east. Using the sun's glare for cover, dove into the American formation. McGuire's P-38s turned to meet them. The fight lasted 30 minutes. McGuire destroyed 3 Zeros. During the engagement, his guns jammed. All 4 50 caliber machine guns and the 20mm cannon. Dead. No way to shoot. Most pilots would have withdrawn, headed home. Not McGuire. He continued fighting for another 30 minutes, using his P-38 as his only weapon, maneuvering aggressively, dashing at enemy fighters, chasing them, drawing them away from the bombers. At one point, he forced a Zero into his wingman's line of fire. His wingman shot it down. McGuire got credit for the assist. 3 confirmed kills on Christmas Day, 34 total, 6 behind Bong. December 26th, McGuire volunteered again, this time to lead escort fighters to Clark Field, another Japanese stronghold, another heavily defended target. The mission launched at 0800 hours. Japanese fighters intercepted over Luzon. McGuire's formation was attacked immediately. He repeatedly flew to the aid of embattled comrades, drove off enemy assaults while himself under attack, sometimes outnumbered 3-1, at times outnumbered worse. During the engagement, he exposed himself to attacks to rescue a crippled bomber, shot down 1 aircraft, parried the attack of 4 enemy fighters, shot down another, single-handedly engaged 3 more Japanese, destroyed 1, then shot down still another. 4 confirmed kills on December 26th, 38 total, 2 behind Bong. McGuire returned to Tacloban late afternoon, 2 days, 7 confirmed victories, the most aggressive flying of his entire career. He'd closed the gap from 9 kills to 2 in 48 hours. The entire 5th Air Force was talking about it. McGuire was on fire. But Bong was already halfway across the Pacific, heading for San Francisco. For parade appearances and newspaper interviews. For his moment as America's greatest fighter pilot. General Kenney received updates on both men. Bong's publicity tour, McGuire's Christmas rampage. The situation was developing exactly as Kenney feared. If McGuire kept flying at this pace, he'd break Bong's record before Bong even reached California. America's Ace of Aces would lose his title before receiving his welcome home celebration. The publicity disaster would be complete. Bong would arrive as yesterday's news. McGuire would be the new champion. The carefully planned narrative would collapse. Kenney grounded McGuire on December 27th, direct order. No more combat missions until Bong had received his proper celebration. McGuire was to remain at Tacloban, attend to administrative duties, train replacement pilots, stay out of the cockpit, stay away from combat. The order was clear, unambiguous. McGuire acknowledged it, said he understood, told Kenney he'd comply. He lied. December 30th. McGuire flew an unauthorized fighter sweep. His squadron knew he'd been grounded. They looked the other way, pretended not to notice when he climbed into the cockpit, took off, hunted for Japanese fighters over Luzon. The mission found no targets, no kills, but McGuire had flown anyway. December 31st. Another unauthorized mission. New Year's Eve. McGuire led a 4-ship flight over Mindoro. Again, no contact, no kills. But again, he'd violated Kenney's direct order. January 2nd, 1945. Third unauthorized mission. This time over Leyte Gulf. Limited enemy activity. No opportunities, no kills. 3 combat missions in 4 days. All unauthorized. All in direct violation of General Kenney's grounding order. None resulted in additional victories, but McGuire had shown his willingness to disobey. His obsession with breaking Bong's record had overridden military discipline. Kenney never discovered the unauthorized flights. Nobody reported them. The entire 431st Fighter Squadron kept the secret. McGuire remained officially grounded, officially waiting for Bong's celebration to conclude, officially following orders. On January 7th, he planned one more unauthorized mission. 4 P-38s, fighter sweep over Negros Island, and this time, he was keeping the external fuel tanks attached. The decision to keep external fuel tanks attached during combat violated every principle McGuire had written about. His tactics manual for the 5th Air Force was explicit. Drop external tanks before engaging enemy fighters. The extra weight compromised maneuverability, made the P-38 sluggish in turns, reduced climb rate, extended dive recovery time, increased stall speed. Standard operating procedure was clear. When enemy fighters appeared, jettison the tanks immediately. 2 simple switches. Left valve to wing tank, right valve to wing tank. Then pull the tank release. The entire process took 3 seconds. 3 seconds that could save your life. McGuire knew this better than anyone. He'd written the manual. He'd trained replacement pilots. He'd survived 2 years of combat by following these principles. On October 17, 1943, over Oro Bay, he dropped his tanks before diving into 7 zeros. That decision saved his life, even after his P-38 was shredded by enemy fire. But on January 7, 1945, McGuire ordered his flight to save their tanks. His exact words were recorded by the surviving pilots. Save your tanks. They would need the fuel to reach their main objective, to search multiple airstrips, to maximize their chances of finding Japanese fighters. The order made tactical sense for the mission profile. Negros Island was far from Dulag. The round trip required careful fuel management. If they dropped tanks over the first airstrip and found nothing, they couldn't reach the second. They'd have to return to base. Mission incomplete, no kills. But keeping the tanks made no sense the moment enemy fighters appeared. Standard procedure demanded immediate jettison. McGuire knew this. Captain Weaver knew this. Lieutenant Throp knew this. Major Rittmeyer knew this. Every P-38 pilot in the theater knew this. The P-38 Pilot Training Manual, AAF Manual 51-127-1, stated it explicitly. Drop external tanks to give greater maneuverability in combat. When Warrant Officer Sugimoto's Oscar attacked, McGuire should have dropped the tanks instantly. 3 seconds, 2 switches, 1 pull. The P-38 would have been lighter, more responsive, better able to turn with the nimble Oscar. McGuire might have survived the low-altitude turning fight. Instead, he kept the tanks attached. Tried to outturn an instructor pilot with 3,000 hours in the Ki-43, at 300 feet. In a P-38 carrying 1,000 pounds of extra weight, the physics were unforgiving. The Lightning stalled, snap-rolled inverted, crashed. Later analysis by 5th Air Force pilots identified the drop tank decision as the primary cause of death. Had McGuire jettisoned the tanks, he might have recovered from the stall despite the low altitude. The P-38 was controllable without external stores. With them, it was a death trap in a low-speed turning fight. The question remained, why didn't McGuire drop the tanks? He had time. Sugimoto didn't appear suddenly. The engagement developed over 30 to 40 seconds. Plenty of time to reach down, flip 2 switches, pull the release, make the P-38 lighter and more maneuverable. Several theories emerged. First, McGuire was fixated on the kill. His entire focus was on getting his guns lined up on Sugimoto, on scoring his 39th victory, on closing the gap with Bong. Everything else became secondary, including survival. Second, McGuire was task-saturated. Managing the P-38 in a low-altitude turning fight required complete concentration, throttle control, aileron inputs, rudder coordination, monitoring airspeed, watching the enemy, trying to predict his next move. Adding one more task, dropping the tanks, might have been one task too many. Third, McGuire believed his skill could overcome the handicap. He was one of the finest P-38 pilots in the Air Force, legendary at maneuvering the big twin-engine fighter. He'd survived dozens of engagements through superior flying. Perhaps he thought he could outfly the physics, outfly the weight penalty, outfly the stall. He was wrong. The rivalry with Bong had consumed him. From mid-1944 through early 1945, McGuire's entire existence revolved around closing the gap. Every mission was an opportunity to score kills. Every engagement was a chance to catch Bong. The obsession drove him to fly with head wounds, with bullet grazes, with broken ribs. It drove him to violate General Kenney's grounding order. It drove him to ignore his own tactical principles. On January 7th, it drove him to keep external fuel tanks attached during combat, to engage in a low-altitude turning fight, to pull the P-38 past its stall speed, to crash at 300 feet while chasing his 39th kill. Thomas McGuire died doing exactly what he'd warned other pilots never to do. The irony was complete. McGuire's death sent shockwaves through the 5th Air Force, not because he died in combat, pilots died every day, but because of how he died. One of the finest P-38 pilots in the theater, dead at 300 feet, killed by his own decision to violate basic tactical principles. The lesson was impossible to ignore. General Kenney issued new standing orders within 48 hours. All P-38 pilots would jettison external fuel tanks before engaging enemy fighters. No exceptions. No discretion. The moment enemy aircraft appeared, drop the tanks. Pilots who failed to comply would face disciplinary action. The order was absolute. 5th Air Force training programs incorporated McGuire's final mission as a case study. New replacement pilots learned about January 7, 1945, about the unauthorized fighter sweep, about the decision to keep tanks attached, about the low-altitude turning fight, about the stall and crash. The training emphasized one point above all others. Even the best pilots die when they ignore fundamentals. McGuire's tactics manual remained in use throughout the war. His teachings on fighter combat were sound. His analysis of Japanese tactics was accurate. His techniques for maximizing P-38 performance were effective. The manual saved lives. But the irony of his death wasn't lost on anyone who read it. The author had died violating his own principles. The rivalry between McGuire and Bong ended on January 7th. Bong remained America's ace of aces, 40 confirmed victories, Medal of Honor, national hero. But the victory felt hollow. Bong had lost a fellow P-38 pilot, someone who pushed the Lightning as hard as he did, someone who understood the obsession with aerial victory. Bong never returned to combat. He married Marjorie Vattendahl on February 10, 1945, participated in war bond tours, then received assignment as a test pilot at Lockheed's plant in Burbank, California. His job was testing the new P-80 Shooting Star, America's first operational jet fighter. August 6, 1945, the day America dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. The same day Richard Bong died in a P-80 crash during a test flight. Engine failure on takeoff. The jet went down in a field near Burbank. Bong was killed on impact. 24 years old. 7 months after McGuire's death. Both of America's top aces dead before their 25th birthdays. McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey was renamed in his honor in 1948. The base continues operations today. C-17 Globemaster and KC-10 extender aircraft carry McGuire's legacy on their tail fins. A P-38 Lightning sits on static display at the base entrance. McGuire's Medal of Honor is housed in the base museum alongside photographs and mission reports from his combat career. A memorial stands at the crash site on Negros Island, erected in 2007 by aviation archaeologist David Mason. Filipino locals maintain the site. They remember the American pilot who died in their jungle, who was protected by their ancestors, who was finally returned home to be buried with honor. The lessons from January 7, 1945 remain relevant. Obsession clouds judgment. Rivalry drives poor decisions. Ignoring fundamentals kills even the most skilled operators. McGuire was America's second highest scoring ace, a brilliant pilot, a tactical innovator, a leader. But he died because he forgot the basics in pursuit of one more kill. 38 confirmed victories, 2 behind Dick Bong, 2 kills away from tying the record, 2 external fuel tanks away from survival, 300 feet away from recovery, 1 decision away from from living. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about pilots who ruled the skies with skill and obsession. Real people, real consequences. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Major Thomas McGuire doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.